Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. We're going to talk about the rise of Pruitt. The fall of Pruitt and the rise of Jim Davis at WebDM. All right, let's get into this. All right, so if you guys are aware of them, there's WebDM, right, which is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition commentary channel. Now, actually, I very commonly, got lots of people. My content, you love it or you hate it. There are very few people in the middle with me, right? One thing I'm fortunate about, though, is a ton of people who absolutely hate my content watch every video, which I kind of wish that wasn't the case, just because the comments are like being ground over glass. I actually read my comments, and they can be incredibly hurtful, and I'm really not sure why, several people who, really dislike my content and think incredibly terrible things about me watch every single video and comment constantly. I don't know, but the reality is I commonly suggest to people, hey, you're not digging my content? There's lots of great channels out there. Go watch this, and the ones I hit is I'm like, go watch Dungeon Craft, go watch Ginny D, go watch those are the Seth Gorkowski, Nerd Immersion. Oh my gosh, this channel is so good. Every single channel I just said, way better channel than mine. Just because the amount of time and effort they put into their work, it's just incredible, right? And I do the best I can with the time I have. One of the things I've done is I've figured out a way to make content at a high quantity rate, right? With a smaller amount of time investment, right? Because I just don't have a lot of time, right? And I don't make any money for this. So you got to figure out a way to do your content in a very small amount of time, right? And so I have a model that allows that, right? So let's talk about WebDM. You have never heard me talk about WebDM on this channel. And the reason why is I don't really like their channel. I never have. I don't think that they just never really impressed me, right? And when I would watch their videos, I felt they had a very cold, very mechanical approach to Dungeons & Dragons. And I'm kind of like, why don't you guys play Warhammer or Twilight Imperium and be done with it, right? I just don't really think they... here's a perfect example. I think they're just 100% dialed in on the combat pillar of Dungeons & Dragons and just massively ignore exploration and interaction, and that made me very unimpressed with their content. However, we're talking about them today because they are huge, right? They were huge. So WebDM was two guys. It was Pruitt and it was Jim Davis, okay? And they are by my count, okay, they are the number 2 Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition commentators on the internet, okay? First of all, there are no Dungeons & Dragons. Tell me if I'm wrong, but the biggest Dungeons & Dragons commentators in the world are on YouTube, okay? And the reality is, Ginny D has 300,000 subs, and these guys have very close to 200,000 subs. And there's, you can count the number of channels that have those kind of subs that are mostly Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition on one hand, right? So they were the number 2. They were subpar subscriber numbers to Ginny D, but no one else, okay? And by the way, if any of those numbers are wrong, hit me up in the comments below. I'd love to know. But my count, they were the number 2 Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition commentators in the world. And the two of them did the channel together, right? Well, about 4 or 5 videos back, they came on and Pruitt was like, hey, this is my last video. I'm not doing this anymore, right? And he said, everything's fine, don't worry, between the two of us, him and Jim. And then he says, but for my own mental health and because of burnout, because I made my hobby my profession, I have to stop doing this. Absolutely fascinating, right? So one of the reasons why I'm bringing you this is news in Dungeons & Dragons commentary. Dungeons & Dragons commentary is a discipline that is being built right now, right? we don't really have a list of our ethics or our, the rules of our discipline, or like the best practices of our discipline, because it's very young, right? And not a lot of people do it. But Dungeons and Dragons commentary is just like American journalism. It's a discipline, and it's growing, and it's shaped, and the discipline is being shaped. I'm a member of the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition community, right? Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition commentator community. I'm a part of that, right? So basically, this is big news in the Dungeons and Dragons D&D commentator community, right? Because it doesn't happen too often where somebody's like, I'm out, like it just says, hey, I'm not really happy with everything that's happened, right? And by the way, boy, it is definitely a thing in Dungeons and Dragons commentary to see men weeping or close to weeping. Last year it was Todd Krennic. I think we get one or more a year, right? So last year Todd Krennic left D&D Beyond and literally cried on camera, right? That's hard to see, because you're like, hey, I don't, and this is the thing I think is fun, is like, oh, it's all just fun. It's just a shoots and ladder game, right, man? It's just like, yeah, it's just like Twister. It's just a game, right? So why are increasingly men flat out crying or their voices cracking, and you could tell they're not trying to not cry, which is exactly what Pruitt did, right? Like, there's a lot of emotion here. Like, it's fraught, right? And boy, I'll tell you right now, I definitely understand that when you do D&D 5th edition commentary, it can get challenging, incredibly challenging. There are days where you want to cry, like it's and I think people are like, oh, you're just talking about a game, or like, and you're like, yeah, I know you think that, but the reality, and to me, of course, this is proof of what I'm seeing. The reason why he had such passionate views and why this mattered to him so much is the reality is that Gary Gygax changed the world in 1974. And when you put yourself close to that and you talk about it and you if you base your life's profession on it, right, which is exactly what Pruitt did, it reverberates, right? And if you're not, and I definitely understand why Pruitt was upset, because I think he kept talking about and making a living at something he didn't fundamentally understand, right? He thought it was just a game. Right, so why are you, a hair's breadth away from your voice cracking, and you're weeping on camera in front of like 50,000 people? Like, and I know the answer, but I'm convinced the rest of the world doesn't, right? And I'm very convinced Pruitt doesn't, right? I think Jim Davis might have an idea, because he's like, you out? I'm here. Let's go. Let's roll. Like, Jim Davis was like, bye. Like, it was like, I think it took him a week to put up his next video. Like, and he's like, yeah, we fine. We're like, see you later. Maybe we'll see you at next year's barbecue. Like, I don't know. It was rough. Like, it was, dropped him like a vestigial tail. Like, it was, So this is big news in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition commentary. I think the reason Pruitt, got kicked sideways by making Dungeons and Dragons his profession, and then that turned to tears and flames for him, is the reality is, I'll tell you right now, what Gary Gygax did in 1974, it utterly changed the world. And if you go deep on this game, you're going to see that, I'm not kidding. Go to Twitter. There are people that are literally using this in the same vein someone would use as psychology, right? Now, the reality is, I do think Dungeons and Dragons can replace psychology 10 years from now if the right people engage and make for a subset of people, right? And take the subject seriously, right? We're not anywhere near there. You can't do it safely now, right? But the reality is people are doing it, right? And so if you have something that people are like, hey, this replaces psychology for me, right? And you don't understand what that is, right? You can definitely end up in the same spot that poor Pruitt found himself in, right? And I think this angst and this emotion and this, this situation going to tears and flames so quickly is purely from being close to something that reverberates power and not understanding what it is. right? And so, and I'm just asking you again, like, watch the video of Pruitt. He close to tears. It's very clear, right? And also, like, he's gonna have to, every video, he's gonna have to go to see, WebDM's gonna be there, and I think it's gonna grow. I think it's gonna do great without him. That's gonna cut him like a knife, for every day of the rest of his life, right? I don't think he's gonna walk away from that unchanged. And so I continue to see men and women dramatically impacted by this shoots and ladder game, and the people are like, "Oh, what happened?" And you're like, "I know what happened." And so, that's why I think what happened with Pruitt, right? What do you think happened with Pruitt? And also, who do you think? What would you say are the top 3 Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition commentators on YouTube by the numbers? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I think it's Ginny D. I think it's then WebDM, and then after that, I would say Nerd Immersion. I think they're top 3. That's my count. Love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.